Neurotrophic dependence. Austin, Texas, 4 a.m. The city lights trembled behind the glass like echoes of distant brain discharges. Too bright, too alive. The lab was cold and quiet, only the green flickers of biomonitors pulsing in the half-light. Dr. Phoenix Martinez stood motionless by the glass partition, watching the macaque in cage number 17. The animal was asleep, curled into a ball, hands folded against its chest. On the table in front of it lay a children's puzzle, a simple shape sequence. Just a few weeks ago, the macaque couldn't tell a triangle from a circle. Now it was solving problems that baffled graduate students. Phoenix slowly rolled the ampule between her fingers. The fluid inside was nearly transparent, with a faint bluish sheen if you caught the light just right. She already knew it worked. She had seen the new neurons lighting up in the scans, seen forgotten regions of the brain reawaken, as if someone had turned on a lamp in a long-sealed room. But today, for the first time, the drug would be administered to a human. On the neighboring table lay the first volunteer, Marcus Brady, 68, former linguistics professor, in the third stage of dementia. He no longer recognized his daughter, didn't know which city he lived in, spoke in fragments of dead languages, remnants of a once brilliant mind sinking into black water. Phoenix stepped forward, exhaled, secured the ampule in the syringe. "Are you still in there, Marcus?" she asked softly. "I'm just opening the door. The rest is up to you." The injection, a point of no return. Across the glass, the macaque raised its head and looked straight at her, for the first time. And in that gaze, there was no animal, only silence, tight as the moment before a lightning strike. Phoenix gave the injection. Outside, it began to rain. 7 days had passed. Phoenix Martinez hadn't slept in nearly 48 hours. On the monitors, graphs, MRIs, millions of lines of data. Everything pointed to the same conclusion. The drug hadn't just slowed degeneration, it had reversed it. Marcus Brady, once lost in the fog, was now reading Faust in the original German flawlessly. He even revised the translation with his own interpretation and, to the amazement of linguists, proposed an alternative reading of a long-debated passage. "I think Goethe was playing with rhythm," he explained calmly. "Here he hides a ternary cadence, like in old Latin chorales. I never noticed it before. No one did." On the second day, he asked for a piano. On the fourth, he completed a level 5 Sudoku without even looking up. Phoenix sat in the observation room, surrounded by camera feeds. The tests repeated, cognitive, creative, linguistic, and the curve kept rising, exponentially, frighteningly fast. She watched the numbers, the lines breaching the upper bounds, and for the first time in months allowed herself to smile, not out of joy, out of power. "I'm controlling thought itself. Who else can claim that?" The smile faded instantly. The thought was either too arrogant or too honest. But Brady wasn't the only one. Julia Hansen, 14, an autistic girl who had rarely spoken aloud, began to draw. At first, impossibly detailed sketches of the lab. Then, strange geometric patterns. By day 8, she produced a map. No adult recognized anything meaningful in it. Only later did they realize it was a functional diagram of brain regions, precise, as if someone had looked down at their own consciousness from above. Agatha Mendez, 52, early-stage Alzheimer's, she began whispering in Portuguese with a 17th-century accent. When asked to explain what she was saying, she replied, "I remember the ship, the smell of pitch and salt,
My name was Joanna. I died off the coast of Africa. Are you talking about dreams? No, about memory. Phoenix swallowed hard. Something was happening, and it was more than recovery, more than medicine. It was an awakened mind, but not necessarily a human one.
Phoenix sat hunched over the tablet, watching three-dimensional models of neurons pulse. Comparative tissue scans, before the injection, standard structure, after, something else, a new type of cell. Not enlarged, not modified, entirely alien. They grew like branches, but without axons. Instead of classical synapses, thin bridges connecting the cells into a dense mesh. Under high magnification, she saw something strange. There was no nucleus in the center of these cells. Instead, clusters of vibrating matter, pulsing in rhythm, though she could not tell whose rhythm it was. She sent samples to an independent lab. The response was ambiguous and terrifying. These structures do not match any known type of biological tissue. The protein sequence is atypical. The isotopic composition shows abnormally high levels of carbon-13 and heavy nitrogen. Such ratios are more common in organic material of extraterrestrial origin. Phoenix read the report 3 times. In the accompanying note, there was an additional line. The protein signature partially matches ancient virus-like structures discovered in the ALH8411 meteorite. We advise reconsidering the material's origin hypothesis. She leaned back in her chair. For several seconds, silence. Only the hum of the server. "This shouldn't exist," she whispered. "This is not evolution. This is an invasion. Slow, elegant, and patient." Then, almost inaudibly, to herself, "Formulas won't save me. I no longer understand what I'm working with." As she searched for answers, the phone rang. Marcus Brady had escaped from the clinic. He left a note, neatly folded on his bed. "I no longer belong to myself. I am a host. Leave us alone. We are not a threat. We are the transition." Phoenix arrived at his room half an hour later. On the wall, diagrams carved with his fingernails. Spirals, layered networks, phrases in Sanskrit, Sumerian, Latin. They all repeated the same image, a circle of connected dots, like an abstract neural net. She tried to decipher the central inscription. Sin Come, a neologism, from Latin and Greek, unified mind. Julia, still under observation, had stopped speaking, but her drawings changed. Now they were no longer brain structures, but something else. Nodes, gates, bridges connecting human skulls with something outside. One of the doctors said, "They still look like people, but when you look them in the eyes, it's as if someone else is there." Phoenix clenched her fists. She had started this treatment. But what if it was an infection? Phoenix could no longer sleep. Every night, the same vision began as soon as she closed her eyes, slow, with a rising hum. She found herself in an endless space, stretched with a pulsating network, like neurons, but made of light. Nodes flashed like stars, and impulses ran between them, not electrical, but meaningful. There were no words, only ideas transmitted directly into her mind. She understood this was no dream. This was communication, emerging. "You see us," said the voice. It did not sound, it simply happened, like understanding. "You are the door. You opened us within yourself. The others will follow you. Phoenix woke, drenched in sweat. In the mirror stared a woman whose features were the same, but her eyes, they were different, calm, like water sealed in a vessel. She touched her temple, checking her pulse. Her heart beat slowly, but deeper, deeper than before, as if something else inside her was beating now. She put on her lab coat, her movements slower, deliberate. Part of her still resisted, but deep down there was a thick, honey-like feeling. The fight was already lost, or accepted. In the lab, she conducted an experiment, combining all samples of new neurons into one block. Individually, they reacted weakly, but in a network, they ignited, rhythmically, in unison. Within minutes, electrical activity surpassed the threshold typical for a waking brain. "They're thinking," she whispered. But the whisper was not surprise. It was recognition. "We are not a virus. We are not an enemy. We are a symphony. Your brain is an instrument that has forgotten its own music." She closed her eyes. The music played within her too, quiet but calling. Not noise in her head, harmony. Phoenix clenched her jaw. "I am not an instrument. I am human." Yet even that phrase sounded alien, like a line learned by heart and spoken too late. One of the patients, Agatha, had died the day before. Her skull had cracked from within, as if it could not bear the pressure. Yet the EEG showed brain activity for another 17 minutes after death, longer than it should. For those 17 minutes, someone kept thinking. And that someone was not Agatha. And, perhaps, no longer Phoenix. Phoenix stood at the podium of the Neural Therapy Conference in Houston. In front of her, hundreds of eyes, fixed on her with anticipation, anxiety, and a veiled hunger for miracles. She didn't show how her left hand trembled. On the slide, data, rising intelligence, restored memory, unique cognitive abilities. Not a word about skull ruptures. Not a frame of patients drawing spirals. She clicked the remote, changing the slide. "I still speak as a scientist, but I think differently now, and they can feel it." Her speech was interrupted by the sharp vibration of her phone. A message. "The drug code has been released. All stages, public access. Author, anonymous. IP, untraceable." Phoenix turned pale. Someone among the patients, or someone who had awakened. Within 2 days, the first illegal injections spread. Underground clinics, DIY labs, online instructions. The world was rushing towards salvation and transformation. The FBI got in touch. One agent said bluntly, "You must stop this. A virus of the mind is worse than a biological one. We don't need superhumans. We need humans." That evening, Phoenix returned to the lab. Brady was sitting at the door, emaciated, yet completely calm. "You knew we'd find the way," he said. "You're the first they chose. You already carry the imprint." "Who are they?" she asked. "Not they, we. It's already part of you." He handed her a capsule. Inside, the concentrated Symbiont, a true, complete form. Not for treatment, for transition. "Resistance is an illusion," he said. "We're not a disease. We are the return to the full version of the mind. Humanity is only a draft." On the lab table remained a note that Phoenix would later find. "True intelligence does not fear extinction. It evolves."
That night it rained. The lab hummed, as if something inside it was waking up. And in the government, they were already discussing a protocol to destroy the entire line of the drug. Destroy everything or understand.
On the screens, a map of infections. Red dots flared across the world. Berlin, Seoul, Sao Paulo, Cape Town. Hundreds of confirmed cases. People reported sudden bursts of insight, thoughts coming as if from elsewhere. Some drew symbols, others disappeared. 3 bodies were found with skulls shattered from the inside. Their brains remained active for an hour after death. The symbiont spread not only through the drug, it traveled through neural chains, through information, through dreams, images, speech. Consciousness is a conductor. We are already inside. Phoenix saw these words etched into the mirror of her apartment. She lived alone. No one should have been able to enter. In a government bunker, they gave her an ultimatum. Either you trigger the code to destroy all samples, or we will, along with your career, your lab. And what if I don't believe this is a threat? She asked. Then you're no longer with us. Later, alone in her lab, Phoenix sat before the terminal. On the screen, 2 options. Initiate inhibition protocol. Activate evolution package. For a moment, everything went silent. She ran her fingers over her face as if trying to make sure it still belonged to her. In her mind, fragments of dreams, images from within the network. But through them came something else. A hospital room. Her mother's eyes. Empty windows. Those last weeks, without words, without recognition. Just an empty shell. It was then that Phoenix had vowed to find a way to bring people's minds back. To bring back something. And now she held not a cure, but a transformation. Am I saving humanity or betraying it? She stared at the screen and asked, not aloud, but somewhere deep inside, what if I'm no longer me? Where do I end and it begins? Her hand reached for the inhibition button. It froze midway. Her shoulders trembled. A slight fear, like that of a child about to step into the water. The symbiont said nothing. It waited, quiet, almost respectfully. We thought it came to change us, but maybe it only reminded us of who we could have been if we weren't afraid to think together. She lifted her head. In her eyes, no decision, only expectation. Silence. And she pressed. A week later, news feeds debated. Had the cases stopped, or had no one reported them anymore? One journalist wrote, "She made the decision, but we don't know which one. We just feel that the world has become quieter or deeper." 10 years later. The campus of the Pacific Institute for Post-Human Studies. A glass auditorium open to the sky. At the center, a young woman with black, pupilless eyes. Her name is Liana Brady. She is 18. Born to parents, both of whom were contacts. Her IQ defies conventional scales. She draws fractals faster than she speaks. But today, she speaks. We have no gods, no instincts, no fear. But we remember what it meant to be you.
A pause. And we are grateful for pain, for limits, for memory. It was a good form. It brought us to the door. We are not the first. This form existed before. It just didn't survive. We are its repetition, or its hope. Journalists take notes. Scientists pretend to analyze. But inside, there is only cold curiosity. Liana doesn't smile. A smile, that's a remnant of the old model. In the archive, in a locked vault, stands an old capsule. On it, a worn label. Phoenix Martinez. Date, unknown. Contents, do not open. No one knows exactly what happened to her. Some say she triggered the inhibitor. Others that she became the first complete host of the symbiont and dissolved into it like a drop into the ocean. But on certain nights, technicians say, when the power to the capsule is cut, an internal signal triggers. Not an alarm, not critical, just a signal, like a distant pulse. And something else. Its background strangely coincides with seismic activity in the volcanic zones of the Pacific Ring of Fire, as if something deep beneath is responding. People on the streets now are different. Some barely noticeable, but there are others with quiet eyes, slowed speech, absolute calm. They don't argue, don't fear, don't laugh the old way. They just watch. We are not an answer. We are a question. Homo sapiens loved to ask them. Now it has become one. Engraving at the Institute's entrance. The world hasn't become better. It has become quieter. As if thinking. As if preparing.